for opening review, I'm going to turn to Derek.
I really liked this movie first time I saw it. Okay? Maybe it was because I was younger. I should tell you, I'm going to sneeze right now.
Keep going.
I thought you had something like important to the film. I should tell you about my bias, and I should tell you I'm gonna sneeze. That's the big thing that like.
And you don't even sneeze.
Never mind.
Forget spoiler alerts.
I should tell you that I was much younger when I watched it, but this time it actually struck with me like they swear a lot in this movie. Yeah, and I was okay with it. Mm-hmm. I usually hate that, honestly, in films when they swear a lot. It can ruin a movie for me. I felt like
when they just make like swearing the joke.
Yeah, I felt like that was what they tried to do a lot in Already a Brother, and it didn't work for me. So it's just not funny anymore. I went to high school. I'm over it. Okay, and but apart from that, I loved the idea that you were just supposed to laugh about people dying. And the whole movie felt like me a commentary on how you could do that, which is what we're talking about now, so it's the perfect movie to watch for that. But I liked... I was a little disappointed in the guy from Criminal Minds. He played his character well, I felt. The character he was playing. But I felt like the character still could have been better. I felt like his acting fell short at a couple points where it could have been more key or even just funnier, since it is supposed to be a comedy. Apart from that, I love the guy who played... I love Damian Clark. He was really, really good. I felt he conveyed a serial killer very, very well. Up there with people like Christian Bale and Anthony Hopkins. It was just amazing.
That's some company to put him in. Brian, would you agree? I mean,
no.
I thought it was great.
I thought the acting was good in this movie.
Yeah,
but it did not keep my attention for any.
The movie wasn't as good, but he played a serial killer just as well.
Damian Clark won the New York Horror Film Festival Award for Best Actor for this film, so it's considered at least somewhat critically a good performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think maybe you're right. Maybe he played the serial killer well, but overall the movie just kind of fell flat for me.
Huh.
I didn't like how it was set up as an infomercial basically throughout the entire movie. Most of those scenes seemed cheesy and ridiculous. I think they were supposed to.
I think they were supposed to be cheesy and ridiculous, yeah.
But I didn't laugh at all during the movie. Yeah. No, so it felt long and in a bad way. Yeah. For an hour and a half movie, it just dragged.
Yeah.
I'm like, this has got to be over soon. Nope. Only a half hour in.
I thought like what they were trying to do conceptually was interesting. I've read a little bit of criticism on it, and it seems like they're taking from a movie called Man Bites Dog, which was a French film, basically with a similar premise. A documentary team follows around a serial killer. And so that concept is kind of interesting, where they mix the actual horror themes in, they mix some aspects of comedy. And I think Damian Clark is very good in this. I think that if it weren't for him and Matthew Gray Gubler, I wouldn't have been able... It wouldn't have kept my attention. Because it does seem to just kind of like... I don't know, it kind of moves. And there's some weird choices. Like there's a... Spoiler alert here. Making light... Like what are the moral implications of basically horror comedy? Why is it okay to make fun of some issues that are so serious? You know?
Well, I feel that a lot of horror comedies... don't take this vein of horror. They don't take the serial killer. They're more monster comedies. They're zombies or alien invasion, maybe. You don't get the one man going around killing people just because he wants to.
Horror comedies.
Horror comedy. Most of your horror comedies are good one-liner because... we're killing zombies. Zombies aren't people.
Yeah.
it's all a survival thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't actually deal with morality in that sense because you don't feel bad about a zombie dying.
I think it was Tom who first actually told me, you're right about not feeling bad. Zombies in some ways have replaced like Nazis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're the bad guy that you don't mind if it dies. There's little to no moral implication about their death.
Yeah.
You know? And so you can do stuff like Zombieland where, you know, he can have this ridiculous scene where he completely slaughters his neighbor, like as she's running through his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Brutally.
Yeah.
And you can laugh at some of the things, especially when he's like, I think he's throwing like Tupperware at her.
Yeah.
Or something, and he's like, ah, ah.
And then he kills her with like a door, and he's like,
yeah, and she just keeps coming, yeah. So, but
he just breaks her leg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so sorry, 19.
There are times though, like there are some slashers. I've heard of a movie called like Otis, which is supposedly like a horror comedy.
Yeah,
which is in this vein. But I think you're right. They rarely go into this vein. I think like serial killers
because they don't want to.
Yeah,
that's really, they don't want to make light of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like the point of this movie though was to get you to ask this question, because especially at the end, the problem with these movies, the reason they don't do serial killers is because just like Dexter does when you watch it, it makes you sympathize with the bad guy.
Yeah,
and like. How is it? The the awesome opening to Swordfish. You don't want the bad guy to win. You don't want the bad guy.
That movie.
I love that movie.
Why did we let you on this podcast?
For that point of view.
I caught him watching Transformers Revenge of the Fallen the other day.
You don't understand. I watched all 3 Transformer movies in a row that day. It was an awesome explosion fest.
There's clearly a generation gap.
What?
No.
People who've watched the Transformers cartoon and people who haven't.
Yeah.
It is true. The Transformers cartoon I've watched is the stupid stop motion one they have now. Actually, I watched the animal one when I was really little.
I remember the animal one. Yeah, so it's do you think it's tough for some people? Do you think it's easier to swallow horror comedy or just horror? And why do you think people would?
I think it's easier to swallow horror comedy, and I feel like the people who swallow horror look at horror movies as that. Like, I don't watch them because they scare me, but people who watch them and think it's funny.
I know people who watch slashers and find
those are the kind of people, like, they view all horror movies as horror comedies because this stuff doesn't happen. So those are hyper realists, whatever, I don't care. But it's just it's their perspective. And so the difference is that the people who can view them all as that. People who can't probably only watch horror comedies because it gives them something to laugh at, so they can ignore the message, so that they can not be scared. I can't watch horror comedies. I love Zombieland. But I can't watch horror movies, but I love Zombieland. But like
I like horror movies now. That's not to say they don't scare me, but I like them. You know, I loved Paranormal Activity, but that movie scared the heck out of me.
I didn't like Paranormal Activity.
And there are people who didn't like it, or it scares them too much and they don't like it, or I know people who've watched it and have been like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's not scary at all. You know, it's a door moving. That's not frightening. I'm like, that's the scariest door I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that door had better not move ever.
Again.
Doors are scary, man. But like, I think you're right to some extent. There are some people who watch horror and laugh at it. But you gotta remember, there are some people who just appreciate horror.
Yeah.
You know? And there is good horror out there.
All right. In lieu of Flick Chart this week, we are doing a top 3. We are doing our top 3 horror comedies. So it didn't have to be intended to be a comedy. And it didn't necessarily have to be slasher comedy, zombie comedy. We kind of expanded it to any sort of monster invasion type movie.
Is Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
Because it is still frightening as heck. It's really scary.
It's as scary as the original.
Yeah.
with the comedy.
My number 2 is an unintentional horror comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Troll 2, the best, worst movie ever made. It was clearly supposed to be a horror movie. There's moments of horror with like a guy that gets turned into a plant and then gets his like legs ripped off and whatnot. And like I feel like I can't do anything else, but it's Shaun of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because it manages to do, unlike something like The Evil Dead 2, which is just horror and is funny and gross, it has amazing characters.
Yeah.
No, so I'm gonna go with 3 being Zombieland because I've seen it. Yeah, and probably what Nate said, Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. Because I think it's hilarious.
Everything on the
Sci-Fi Channel. Fine. How about
honorable mention for the Sci-Fi Channel?
Ice spiders.
Ice spiders? There's a funny one.
Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus.
The new one.
My number 3 would probably be Zombieland because I don't know. It to me it is my number 2 is probably Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks.
Because it just came out at that time. My number 1 has to be Snakes on a Plane.
Snakes on a Plane. How did I forget about that? Yeah, that's a horror film.
Monkey fighting snake.
Yeah,
Monkey fighting snakes.
On this Monday to Friday plane.
It's